Hi, my name is Becky, and this is my testimony. This is the story of how and why I started following Jesus. I grew up in a family that called themselves Christians but didn't follow Jesus. And I was the same way. I called myself a Christian, but if you asked me to tell you what that meant, I would have no idea. And I didn't really care to. I wasn't against God at all or anything. I just didn't see how he fit into my day-to-day life. I didn't think much about Christianity or religion or God at all until I was a sophomore in high school. I was 15 and I started dealing with a lot of depression and anxiety and suicidal thoughts. It was so heavy that I knew I needed something bigger than myself to help me. So I started going to church. I started thinking about God again. I started praying to God, and I was asking him to help me, to get rid of my mental health problems, to put good things in my life. In my mind, I thought that because I was going to church and because I was praying, God was then going to do things exactly the way that I wanted him to do. And that's not what happened exactly. And nothing really got better. I was still dealing with depression and anxiety, and because I didn't know there was a difference between having a relationship with Jesus and just going to church and being religious, I actually ended up walking away from the church because I wasn't receiving the help that I thought that I was going to receive. I soon found out about New Age practices. This really sparked my attention. I wanted to take control of my life. And the illusion of New Age is that you can. It's that you're your own creator and you get to manifest anything that you want, or use these different New Age practices in order to create the life that you've always desired. So that's what I started doing. I started learning about manifesting and trying to manifest stuff. I got into astrology, crystal usage, incense usage for all of these New Age beliefs and purposes in order to create the life that I wanted for myself. This gave me a glimmer of hope, honestly, for the first time, because I thought this is what was gonna help me. This was what was gonna make my world worth living. I was gonna be able to be rich because I could manifest wealth. I could manifest relationships. I could manifest the perfect husband. Everything was gonna be perfect from here on out because I had the power, because I get to create my own life and my own destiny. The premise of New Age is you basically get to be God. You get to be God of your life. And in my mind, this started to make so much more sense compared to religion. I thought religion was just this fairy tale that people believed because they weren't smart like I was smart to have figured out that that wasn't true. I was very arrogant when turning away from Christianity, and I began my spiritual journey. It was different. I actually started to realize that there was spiritual realities to the world that I had never known before. I was so used to living so secular, so mundane, day-to-day, just with this secular view on life, that when I started getting involved in these spiritual practices, it seemed brand new. I thought, this is nothing like the church. This is nothing like religion. I thought it was very elementary and ignorant to be religious in any way, and especially a Christian. From there on out, I started getting deeper into my New Age beliefs, and it went from kind of a side hobby or something I was interested in to being everything. My whole identity, my whole life. I got into witchcraft practices, so I started practicing things like trying to leave my body as I slept and astral project. The main thing I started getting into was tarot cards, and I learned how to do tarot. When I was going deeper in my New Age spiritual awakening, as I called it, I more than ever before realized how spiritual the world was. Before, I had this slight understanding of this spiritual realm, and now I was completely engulfed in it. When I was doing these tarot cards, I could read people's fortunes. I could tell them things that they had never told people before about themselves. I could tell them things that were going to happen that ended up happening. I would get supernatural downloads from what I thought were my spirit guides, basically kind of like angels or beings that would guide my life and make it good. And I thought that they were the ones telling me all of these things about these people that I was reading their fortunes. This gave me a lot of pride, a lot of boasting in the fact that I could do this. And I became very stuck in my ways. But around this time, I also started using psychedelics. And I used them often for a period of time. And this really changed things as well. People talk about the use of psychedelics and how it opens your third eye. That's basically what happened. At least that's the best way to describe it to people who've done the same thing, and that's the word that they use to describe what's going on. In reality, you're not opening your third eye, because that's not a thing, but that's what it's called. And I started to see the world completely different. I would experience things and new things that I should have never known or seen, and none of it I could explain. People will tell you when you're doing these drugs that when you come out of it, you can't even explain what happened while you were in it because it's completely unexplainable. That's what it was. And for the rest of the time after doing those drugs, I no longer saw the world the way that I used to. And a mix of doing those drugs as well as going deeper and deeper and deeper into New Age, doing things like shadow work, inner healing, all these practices that are meant to bring freedom, but yet I was so depressed and so confused. At first, when I was doing all these New Age things, I was so excited to be able to create my life. But all of a sudden, I found myself in this pool of confusion about the world. What was even going on? What was I seeing? Why did nothing look real anymore? And confusion why these practices weren't working or why I was still so miserable. Or then it was just like, well, the reason you're still miserable is because you need to do some more shadow work. You need to heal this, and then you can release this blessing into your life. There was just always another step to being happy. And I was never there. That hope that I had of that joy from getting all of these things and being the creator of my life never came. If even for a second, maybe, it quickly disappeared when something else bad would happen that I had no control over. And I began to question a lot of things. I began to question New Age. I began to question what I was doing and what I believed. And I began a hunt to know the truth. I wanted to know what the truth was. I knew there was one out there, and I knew there was something I was missing. Because up to this point, I had kind of just gone with whatever. I'd made up a religion in my mind. I'd made up life in my mind. I was just like, when I die, I'm gonna be in the clouds with unicorns, but I'm also gonna be reincarnated into a Buddhist monk, and I'm also gonna do this and that, and I'm also gonna blah, 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 blah. I just made up random things that made me feel better in the time. And I started to really wonder what was true. And I asked myself questions like, how did the earth come to be? What was going to happen when I died? Was there an afterlife? And what was the afterlife? And where was I going? And what what is even going on? Is there a reason for life? Is there a purpose for my life? I started realizing how all the things I once wanted and desired were meaningless. I mean, so what? I got all the money in the world, and I got the husband I wanted, and I got 6 dogs and fame and popularity and admiration and whatever else I wanted. So what? Who cares? I realized how vain it all was, and I became obsessed with knowing the why I existed. And I was really confused why nobody else wanted to know this. Why did nobody else care who they were, where they came from, and like things that actually matter? And I was living every single day of my life miserable and seeking truth. I started looking really heavily into philosophy. I wanted a philosopher to be able to explain to me morality and truth and life and death. I started having all of these revelations about the world. I realized that people would always say, it's your truth, whatever you want to be true is true. But yet those same people would advocate against different human rights issues. And I started to wonder, well, is there an objective morality or no? Because there can't be subjective morality. That doesn't make sense. Something can't be good and bad at the same time. If something's bad, it's bad. If something's good, it's good. Or nothing is nothing. Either everything is bad and good, whatever you want it to be, or there has to be an objective morality. I thought about the concept of murder, and I was wondering, most people on earth would say murder is wrong, murder is bad, but why? Where does that come from? And how do we know that murder is bad? Because what if somebody else thinks that it's not? Are they correct just because that's their truth? No, of course not. I was very aware that there was evil in the world, and I couldn't explain it. I was starting to reveal all these understand all these biblical truths without even knowing the Bible or reading the Bible or believing Christianity at all. And I had no idea. I finally came to the conclusion that I will never know truth. There's just no way. We'll never know, and that's how we're supposed to live. I was miserable. I was depressed. I was suicidal. I wanted to die because I wanted to know what was going to happen when I died so bad that I was just like, take me now so I can just go ahead and know. It was eating me alive to know. It's all I ever thought about every minute of every day. And I couldn't figure it out. No matter how hard I searched, no matter what I read, no matter what religions I looked into, I never could find the truth. Until one day, I was on TikTok and I came across this video from this girl who I had followed because she had done psychedelics and posted about psychedelics and witchcraft and new age and all the things that I was doing. And she had an encounter with Jesus, gave her life to Jesus, deleted all of her content, and said she was going to start following God. I was confused, to say the least. I thought that I had a higher consciousness than that. That was one thing I believed in, that my consciousness, meaning my understanding of the world, was pretty much above other people's and above the idea of religion. So the fact that this girl who had the same mindset as me became a Christian was very confusing to me. And mentally, I was like, this girl is so stupid. Like, what is wrong with her? Why does she think this is true? But in my spirit, I felt something stirring. It was like my body was at war with my mind. I even left a hate comment, and I was like, this is so stupid. Like, why would you say this? And I realized every single comment on this video was a hate comment. And immediately I was a little confused. I was like, wait, why is everyone hating on her? If that's her choice. She wants to be religious, she can be. And then I was like, why did I? So I deleted my comment and I was like, I shouldn't care what other people do. It's fine. And then I unfollowed her and threw my phone, and I was like, I'm not gonna worry about it, whatever. But I could feel something inside of me just like, I have to know more. And I didn't know what it was. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go find someone else with a similar testimony. In her testimony video, she talked about someone else who shared their testimony with her. And so I went to go find this other person's testimony because I had never heard a story like this before, and I wanted to hear it from somebody else. I ended up finding this girl's testimony, which was totally the Lord, because the video I had watched, this girl mentioned this girl from Instagram. I don't even remember her name. But my mind immediately said, go find Taylor from TikTok. So I went to go find this girl on TikTok named Taylor, even though the girl's name wasn't Taylor and she was from Instagram, or the testimony she saw was on Instagram. And so that was the Lord, first of all. And this girl existed and she was following her. And so I found this girl, and she also happened to have a testimony of her coming to know the Lord. She was a witch for like 8 years of her life, but she had made a whole career of it. She did professional tarot card readings. She was in a band. She sold art. She talked to deities and was heavy into witchcraft specifically. So even more deep into things than I was. Did psychedelics for a long, long time, very often, and overnight had an encounter with Jesus and quit her band, quit her jobs, completely changed her life, threw away all of her stuff that was New Age and started following Jesus. And I was jaw-dropped, shocked. I was like, either this is true or this girl's literally insane. Like, there's no in between. And so I messaged her and I was like, what are you talking about? I don't understand. I didn't think that this girl would reply to me, but she did. She asked me if we could just talk on the phone, and I said, okay. The night that I had sent that message to her, I was in tears with confusion about everything. There was this huge part of me that just knew that this was different, that the Jesus that this girl was talking about was different than anything that I had ever heard of in my entire life. But I was still mentally so confused and trying to resist this idea. I even cried out that night to Jesus and I said, Jesus, show me if you're real. And then I said, universe, I'm sorry. Please don't let me be a Christian. And then I said, but Jesus, if you're real, please show me. I was just going back and forth and back and forth. The next day, I talked to this girl on the phone the next night. And I actually came with a list of reasons. I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget them, why Christianity was stupid and Jesus didn't make sense. All the things mentally that I had to argue against the case of Jesus. But as she started speaking and telling me her story and telling me what the Bible says and telling me the gospel, those questions dropped. They went out of my mind instantly, and I was taken aback. And it was as if her voice went away and the voice of God was speaking directly to me clearly. And I knew that Jesus was real. She didn't have to convince me. I just knew it. I felt it. I had a revelation about the truth. I knew that he was the missing puzzle piece. She had told me 2 Corinthians 11:14, which says, and no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. As soon as she said that verse, the Lord gave me a revelation of the spiritual world. I realized instantly that all the practices, the New Age stuff that I was doing was spiritual. It was real. You know, I wasn't crazy and making those things up, but it was from Satan. That there was a real spiritual war going on for my soul between God and between Satan, and that I had a choice. There was no in between. If I wasn't doing things with God in his light and in his way, then I was doing it for Satan. Anything that wasn't from God was from Satan. I realized in that moment, and I realized the reality behind everything I had been doing. The spirit guides that I thought I was talking to were demons. All of the stuff that I thought was hippie and peace and love was from Satan. It was demonic, and it was disguised as something good, as something fun, as something love and peace and all these things. But in reality, I was miserable. In reality, I was more confused than ever before doing those things. And I was lost and I was hurt And it did not bring all the things that I thought it would bring, and that it was disguised, the illusion that it would bring into my life. And the Lord showed me instantly that if I wanted that was found in him, that he was the truth that I had been seeking, that he was real, that he was spiritual, that he wasn't this secular church, but that he was a real living God that wanted a relationship with me, that he loved me so much, that he was waiting for me, that he had chased after me, and that he had brought me to him, and that I had the choice now to follow Jesus or to keep doing the stuff that I was doing. And of course, I chose Jesus. It wasn't even a choice. It wasn't, let me weigh my options. The truth that I had been seeking, I found in one moment in Jesus. And in that moment, that I accepted it, that I knew it was true, that I decided to follow God, my room lit up. It was like a dark cloud literally was lifted off. Like I saw the world completely different. And I was filled with the most supernatural peace that I had ever felt in my entire life. I felt like I was floating on a cloud or something. And there's no words to describe that moment. I was filled with so much joy and hope for the future, hope for the truth. I knew that in that moment that I no longer had to live in confusion. I no longer had to live in this pain and this fear, but that I got to walk alongside the creator of the universe besides God and fellowship with him and know him and walk in all the good things that he wanted to show me and to give me. And I was in tears. To say the least, I was sobbing. I didn't even have words. All I could say was sorry to God. And I also had a deep revelation, it was heavy on my heart, that I had also been talking to demons and taking part in demonic activities, and I was basically on the wrong side. And the weight of that was also on my heart. And to say the least, that night I was a little freaked out because I realized that demons were real and that I had opened this door for them into my life. But at the same time, I had all this faith in Jesus and all this hope in Jesus that it was this weird emotion. I went to sleep that night and I made sure to keep my fairy lights on, my little lights in my room, just to have some light because I was scared to go to sleep in the dark. And I had fallen asleep, possibly with my phone on. I don't remember keeping my phone on. I don't know. But I had had a dream that night where I was basically taken to what seemed like this big room, this dark, just black room, but there was these two black shadow figures that I could see kind of elevated. And in my mind, I knew this was a king and a queen, but that it was something demonic. And it was like this heavy demonic presence, and it was pulling me towards it, and I couldn't move away. And I was going towards this black shadowed demonic figure. It was saying to me, "You don't know what you just did. Wait until you see what I do to you. Turn back now or else. Watch and see how I ruin your life." All of these different things. And it was the most demonic thing I had ever felt. And I was terrified in this dream. I knew I was dreaming and I knew what was going on. And I knew, in my mind, I was thinking something really bad's about to happen to me. Like I could feel it in my spirit in that dream, like just this overwhelming, horrible, demonic feeling. And in that moment, I woke up to my phone playing Christian music, worship music. I promise you, I had never listened to worship music, like by myself a day in my life. And all of a sudden, that's what my phone was playing. And that's what woke me up from that dream. And I was frozen with fear, and I start looking around, and at first I'm confused what that noise is. And then I realize, is this worship music? And I look at my phone, and it's on like top 50 worship songs. And I was like, on YouTube, and I was like, what? And I look over at my fairy lights, and they're all burnt out. I was in pitch black, and I was like, okay, that happened. And the enemy was mad, to say the least. Anyways, a week later, I went to college. I started my freshman year of college. When I had that encounter with Jesus, it was a few days after my 18th birthday. And so I was 18, I went to college, and I was still kind of confused on how to follow the Lord, because I knew I believed in Jesus, but I, again, didn't really know what that meant. I started praying for community, for friends that would help me to show me like who Jesus really is, or mentors or leaders or something that could help me understand. And the Lord quickly led me to a community. I joined a group and started reading the Bible. I made a bunch of friends in the Lord, and they knew Jesus. They were there for me in the hard times and could help me walk and talk through all the things that I was now processing, coming to know the Lord. And as I was reading the Bible, I joined a Bible study, and I was amazed at what I was reading. The first thing I did after having that experience with Jesus was start reading my Bible, but I started reading in Genesis. Not that that's a bad thing, I just I thought the Bible was all one book. I didn't know it was multiple books. So I started page 1, and I read like the story of Noah's Ark, and I was shocked at the fact that I didn't even know what Noah's Ark was. Like, I didn't even know the things that most of the people around me knew, like these basic principles of Christianity. And I was in love. The more and more I read his word, the more and more I fell in love with him, and the more and more freedom I got. The Lord started delivering me of all my addictions. I stopped smoking weed. I stopped partying. I stopped drinking. That night that I had that encounter, I threw away all my witchcraft stuff. I got rid of that completely. But, up to that point in my life, I had never processed so many things from my whole life. And the Lord began healing me of trauma, of pain, of hurt. And he has put my identity in him, and he has changed my heart and my life. He has filled me with joy, with freedom. It wasn't all this overnight process. I didn't wake up the next day feeling like $1,000,000, like everything had been completely figured out and I was completely fixed. But I had this supernatural hope in my heart, and I knew everything was going to be okay. And the longer I follow the Lord, the more and more I experience his love and his goodness. And it's been almost 2 years, and I am a completely different person. One of the biggest things was during that time, because I was doing psychedelics, my mind was literally messed up. I was at the point where I felt like I was about to go crazy. I called it spiritual psychosis, because I was like, I'm like literally losing my mind. Nothing looked real. I didn't feel real. I had dissociation, dehumanization. Like, I didn't think I was a real person. No one around me felt like a real person. Nothing seemed or looked or felt real. And as soon as I came to know the Lord, that didn't immediately go away. But over time, the Lord began to heal my mind in a way that is completely supernatural, because my brain was completely rewired and there was no going back from it. But Jesus completely healed my mind of that, the way I used to think and the way I used to see life. And I now see things normal. Like, I remember the day I realized I feel normal. I was just like, I don't feel crazy anymore. Like, everything just is okay again. Better than okay, because of many reasons. One, I came to know God. I came to know the truth. And because of that, I came to know my purpose, that I had purpose, that my life wasn't in vain and it wasn't meaningless, and that God had me here for a reason, that there was an afterlife. I came to know what it was, and not only what it was, but knowing where I would be and knowing who I would be with. It's one thing to know about heaven. It's a whole other thing to know Jesus and to be elated every single day of your life that when you die, you get to spend eternity with him because of how good he is and how much he loves you. There is nothing else I'd rather do for the rest of eternity than to be with Jesus. And I get to live my life now with Jesus and know that for eternity I get to be with Jesus. And there's literally nothing better than that. There's literally nothing better than that. So, yeah, that's my testimony. John 8:32 says, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. That's exactly what happened. I found the truth. Well, the truth found me, actually. It's crazy because the last place I looked was Jesus, and there he was. I knew the truth, and the truth set me free, and I am free. So, yeah. Okay, bye.